Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and in this episode, we sit down with Greg Rostami. Now, you either know who Greg Rostami is and you know about some of the devilish things that he does, or you don't know who Greg Rostami is, and this episode is going to blow your mind. Greg is one of the prominent app magic creators. He has right now two incredible magic apps that are on the market, and they do really phenomenal things. And in this episode, we break down the pros, the cons, and the challenges of app magic. We talk about combining the different things that you like, the passions that you love, and we talk about how to use app magic virtually, which is a really big deal right now. I'm trying to arm you guys with everything possible to do amazing virtual magic. I hope that you learned something great in this for the real world and for the virtual world. I hope you like it. I hope you learned something. Here it is, a wonderful time with the one and only Greg Rostami. Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and we are here with the one and only Greg Rostami. Greg, how are you?
Great. Thank you, Jonah. Thanks for having me.
I am super excited to have you on and chat all about the world of technology and magic apps. Let's start at the very beginning. How did you get started in magic?
Well, I got started when I was 10 years old. I think that my dad got us a Svengali deck. And at the time, we had no idea what it was, just because when we took it out of the box, it's like, wait a minute, every other card is the same. And only, upon reading the manual, we figured out, what the gimmick is of, the cards being short and long. And that's really where I got started. And I was just fascinated by it. And I think I had my biggest experience in really being inspired by a great magician when I was at a bar mitzvah. A friend of mine had a bar mitzvah that I went to, and there was a great magician that was hired there. And that was it.
So you got a little bit into magic. You saw some things. Talk to me a little bit about what the next kind of steps were that brought you towards magic.
I loved the clever aspect of magic. And I think that most magicians that are also engineers or scientists, come back to this one word over and over again, which is clever, because that by definition, that's what all progress is. The human animal is clever. So, and that's what it was. I enjoyed, every aspect of magic, from stage magic to close-up magic. But of course, I preferred close-up, and I would perform it as often as I could. Very early on, probably like maybe about 17 years old, I actually started doing magic professionally. But yeah, that just kept going. And obviously, with all magicians, they take something and they make it their own. And I would do the same with just about everything I bought.
One of the topics that I want to get into and talk about is the overlap of technology and magic. And before we get into it, what really excites me about magic right now is the people that are innovating and doing interesting things. And specifically, that is when they combine magic with something else, whatever it is, whatever the thing is that they know very well, and they combine it and they make innovation. And that's how a lot of innovation happens in the world of magic. So I'd love to hear kind of how did that overlap between magic and technology kind of start entering your thoughts?
Yeah, I have a background in electrical engineering. So some of the original ideas that went into becoming iForce were actually hardware ideas. I wanted to build hardware very similar to what Craig Filsetti builds in Pro Mystic that would allow this kind of stuff to happen. It's always been, the origins of thought when it comes to creating magic are either you start with an effect and you try to develop a method that would accomplish the effect, or you start with some kind of a technology, some root kind of fundamental technology, and you say, how can I exploit this technology for a magical effect? So, around the time that the iPhone was released, when I was thinking about creating hardware, was around the same time that e-ink displays, which are now synonymous with things like the Kindle reader, were introduced into the world, which are really, really amazing because, in contrast to a display that emanates light, ink displays actually reflect like paper would. And so I was very fortunate to see some of the first versions of e-ink before anybody else in the world had actually seen it. And I even got to see it actually without any kind of plastic coverings on it, which makes it really look like paper, which is just really uncanny and really cool. And that's one of the reasons why I started thinking about using e-ink actually as a method of doing magic. So it was just like these ideas then matured, and then I eventually realized that developing hardware would not only be expensive and time consuming and difficult, it'd be easier. There was technology that already did some of the things I wanted to
Right.
do in iPhones, in the first version.
You just needed to utilize it.
Yeah, yeah. And so I got together, with my buddy Randy Croucher. We decided to make a magic app, and that became basically iForce, which was released in 2009, which is almost 11 years ago now.
It's crazy to think, and obviously one thing about apps is that as the iPhone changes, new generations of everything changes, obviously the app has to grow and change. So it's funny because iForce was like the first iteration of these ideas coming to the table, and now so many years later, obviously it's had to grow and change, and now there's so many different incredible functionality. So let's talk a little bit about magic apps. So walk us through kind of very briefly the apps that you have available right now, just so people can kind of understand what we're talking about, and then we'll get a little bit deeper into the psychology of them.
Yeah. Every time I set out to create any of my apps, it's intended to be a utility. So the biggest utility that I have on the market right now is Inject. Now it's called Inject 2.0. For each one of them, I take kind of like a foundational idea and I try to mature that idea and to build a foundation that can be strong enough where that idea can be a real utility so that it can be as versatile as possible. And that's one of my highest priorities in making any product is versatility is key. Because I know that even though I know that my creativity is limited, basically, that eventually I'm going to hit walls into, what I can come up with as far as the applications of the technology that I create. But I also know that if I make something that's versatile enough, then other people's creativity is going to be considerably better than mine, and they'll do.
And also easy for someone to execute it if all the pieces are in place already.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It has to be the ultimate Swiss Army knife.
Right.
And that's my main goal in making anything is to provide the Lego pieces and enough Lego pieces where you feel like you can do anything you want. Like I said, Inject is the big one that's on the market right now, which is very rich and very deep. ReaList is the one that we just recently released, which is also a great utility, but it's a little bit more focused, towards doing a particular thing that relates to lists that are on Google. Of course, iForce, which, like I said, goes back 11 years. The other apps that I have right now are not as prominent just because, Inject and ReaList have taken so much of center stage.
So let's talk a little bit about what is Inject and what is Realist, for people who don't know anything about them.
Inject is an app that allows a magician to convert any spectator's phone into becoming a secret transmitter or a receiver. And so Inject works without using Wi Fi or Bluetooth. It works completely across the internet. And the biggest core concept in Inject is if you can motivate why you need information from Google or why you would have to, let's say, use the internet to show an image or anything else like that, is the main motivation as to why you would want to borrow a spectator's phone to, proceed with the effect. That's the main idea behind Inject. And what's nice about it is that you can perform Inject, either in person or you can actually perform it, over video chat. So for nowadays, for a lot of magicians that are doing Zoom shows, what's great about it is that oftentimes Zoom shows are magicians that are doing something visual for a camera where the magic can't really happen in the spectator's hands. because obviously you can't touch the spectator, Whereas one of the unique things about both Inject and Realist is the magic does actually happen in the spectator's hands because it's happening on their device and there's really no explanation for it. Similar idea for Realist. Realist leverages on the idea of Google Stats website, where Google showcases what's trending in the searches of Google, and we take advantage of that as a general purpose forcing utility, so you can force pretty much anything you want on your spectator, and again, it happens on their phone.
There's a few aspects of some of these apps, that the Swiss Army knife, it happening on their phone and different things like that, that push them outside of some of the classic objections that come from apps. So let's talk about the first one, which is as soon as someone sees me pull out my phone to do a trick, they think that I have a special app for it. And all of these things happen without the use of your phone on the spectator's phone.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, yes. That's actually one of my main theses, and theses, I should say, in performing app magic. If you ever see me perform any of my effects, I actually have zero visible technology. I actually make a point of not even wearing a smartwatch. You see me at a, let's say, a magic convention, that's the first thing you'll notice is that I have absolutely nothing. I don't have a deck of cards. I don't have coins. I don't have any props. So that's one of the differentiation factors of what I like to do, or app magic. I would say probably in general that involves a spectator's phone is the magician isn't using typical magic props. Which is kind of attractive, and it also makes it very utilitarian in that you don't have to worry about carrying any traditional magic props with you as you're out and about. So at the drop of a hat, you can just borrow anybody's phone and jump into an effect, and they have no idea how that's possible.
It kind of feels like having a stacked deck with no cards.
Yeah,
Like it's like having a memorized deck with no cards in hand, and you have all of these advantages and tools at your disposal, but you literally have nothing in your
yeah,
hand.
yeah. You have absolutely nothing. When it comes to some of the strengths that are in app magic, I always reference performances that have had some of the best reactions in my life that have been for people that did not know I do magic. The reason why I say that is because regardless of who you are and regardless of who you know, when you walk up to someone that does not know you and you bring a deck of cards out of your pocket, it's obvious that you're going to do a magic trick, because people usually don't walk around with a deck of cards in their pocket. And that even extends to, believe it or not, coin magic as well, just because of your body gestures and how magicians transform into magicians, even when they handle something as simple.
In performance
Yeah,
mode.
they go into performance mode, and so that's one of the things that happens whenever any prop is handled by a magician. You literally transform into a magician. Whereas in contrast, when I perform inject effects, where I start my premise starts with, I've been trying to memorize the birthdays of celebrities. So if I said that to you right now and you didn't know that I was a magician, you would think that's an intriguing topic. It's like, oh, that's kind of weird. And I guess you got too much time on your hands, right? so so it leads to something that doesn't scream, I'm about to do a magic trick for you. And it also leads into motivating and the necessity of having Google get involved, because if I was to ask you to look up the birthday of a celebrity, you wouldn't reach over to an encyclopedia stack, you know and pull that out. You would just simply Google the birthday of a celebrity. So that's something else that's really, really, really important, is that for every effect that I've created, the motivation has to be solid as a rock as to why we need, need as in all caps, Google or the internet to look up this information.
There's some great moments, and I'll just like paint a picture of one of them, which is really phenomenal, where you tell a spectator to take out their phone and open Google, and they do they they can do some things, and you can basically take their phone from them for like a second, and then you give it back to them, and things kind of look and feel exactly the same, and it's that was one of those moments which you can erase, in their memories. They chose to take out their phone, they chose to open Google, they choose, and those are one of those things that in Magic, we erase the memory of those like small moments when we picked up the deck for a moment and put it back down, to palm a card, or whatever the case may be. So that's just like a little example of one that really got me excited, because it's like the motivation is deeply hidden. They take out their phone, they open Google, they search it, and then a few seconds later, things are going on, and it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, yeah. There are effects, for example. I mean, there's technology in Inject that allows you to do that, even if you didn't handle the spectator's phone, where you can do it completely remotely. But yeah, even in instances where you perform where you are handling the spectator's phone, the moment that you are taking their phone from them, even that action is motivated because you are about to share something with them about a feature maybe that might be in Google that they might not know about, or there's a variety of different motivations. Any great magician can tell you that you can have a good idea, but if you don't really see the idea through in every little detail of how it's going to be executed so that it can take a great idea and make it epic, then it's going to fail. And so I think that that's one of the other things that I really like to focus on every time I create something is making sure that even the most minute action has a reason.
One of the comments about technology and Magic that comes up often is, someone might say, I already think phones are Magic. Whenever someone's using a phone, like already, I don't know how it works. I don't know how it sends text messages. I don't know how is that going to be more amazing than something appearing or disappearing in somebody's hand. Can you talk a little bit about that? How do you hide the use of the technology, and or make it less relevant or less important, I guess, in the overall
Right.
effect?
That's a great question, and it's a question that I'm asked all the time. The answer is not having a line that goes directly from A to B. Okay, and let me give you an example of that. If I said to you that I've memorized the birthdays of celebrities, and then I had you look up the birthday of someone, so let's say you looked up the birthday of Tom Cruise, and then I immediately turned around and I told you that you were thinking of Tom Cruise, there is a very clear line that connects A to B. The method at that point and the use of technology is kind of obvious.
It's kind of like the too perfect
Yeah,
theory. Like
exactly.
there's only one answer as to where the information could have come
That's
from.
right. Right. That there's only one solution as to what the method is.
Right, right.
Whereas in contrast, if you see me perform, for example, the birthday effect, the spectator looks up the birthday of Tom Cruise on their phone, and I then ask them to tell me what the month of this person's birthday is. Now, notice how important that question is. I've asked them to look up the birthday of someone on Google. I immediately know who it is that they've searched for. I know that it's Tom Cruise. I don't have to ask them what's the month of this person's birthday.
And let me ask you this. You know this without any visible sight of technology.
Exactly. Yes, yes. I know this, but any visible
Wow.
sign of technology.
Right, right, right.
Right, right. So at the point that I know that it's Tom Cruise, I mean, the worst thing that I could do is turn around and tell them, yeah, Tom Cruise, right? Right? That would be terrible. That would really, really be terrible, right? So there, when it comes to me turning around and asking them, could you name the month that this person was born? So they say July. Okay. So I'm like, oh man, July is like my worst month. I have such a hard time remembering all the people that were born in July. It's probably going to fail, but let's try it anyways, right? Which is a typical line that magicians and mentalists use. It's probably going to fail, but let's go ahead anyways.
That's when you know it's for sure gonna work. That's
Right,
when
right. Which adds to the tension of the performance. So now the next thing that I do is, just put out your hand. I put my hand against their hand, or if I can't touch them, I would look into their eyes. Think about the first letter of their first name, and then again, I'm getting a feeling that's a T. Okay, probably it's a man. And so then I go ahead and proceed to reveal that the person that I can remember that was born in July, that you're probably thinking of right now is Tom Cruise. Okay. So what that does now is every time I've performed this, what the spectator walks away with is these are the thoughts that are going through their mind. They're like, okay, well, I looked up the birthday of anyone that I wanted in Google. He then asked me for the month of this person's birthday, right? So, which necessitated why he needed me to go to Google because he needed that information, right?
And also in the same way that in regular mentalism, like, or non-app mentalism, like if somebody writes a word down, and you don't immediately, as soon as you find out what the word is, you don't immediately go, "You thought of this," right?
Right.
You lean into the magic and the sensationalism to help bury the message.
Exactly. Right, right. As if you're getting cues from their micro
Hmm.
gestures or other things like that that lead you to figuring out whatever it is they were thinking of. And actually, I'm glad you brought up writing something down. Magicians, oftentimes mentalists, when they perform for difficult spectators, they always get this thing, where the mentalist hands a pad of paper and a pencil and says, "Write this down." And the difficult spectator says, "Why?" Right? Why should I write it down? And so now the mental has to say, well, it's proof so that in the future you're not going to lie to me. It's like, no, it's okay. I see Joe standing right over here. I'll just, whisper in his ear who I'm thinking of. And then I thought about those kinds of things as well, and that even though mentalists for the last 100 years or more have found ways of motivating writing something down so that later on they can use any one of many peeking devices to figure out what they've written down. That's our job. It's our job is to motivate why you have to write something down. So essentially using things like Google to acquire information that no one else would know other than looking it up in Google, in my opinion, is even stronger than writing something down because it's the ultimate necessity. There is no other way really of getting that information.
Like, I don't know when Justin Bieber was born, and there's only one way that I would figure that information
Exactly, you
out.
got it right. And that's really, I think, an important aspect of all of this. A similar thing applies to, there's an effect in Inject, which is the Houdini photo, where Houdini is holding a playing card and the reveal is in the highlights of Houdini's eyes. So when I start that performance, usually I talk about how Houdini was fascinated by subconscious communication or subliminal messaging and how he would doctor photographs that was taken of him just to prove how he can subconsciously communicate with people without them even knowing that they are being manipulated. And so then I proceed with the performance where I say, I used to have this photograph, but I don't have it with me right now. Thank goodness this photo is available online. So notice how I'm again motivating why the spectator should bring out their phone and we should find this photograph of Houdini. And then, the actual effect is in the photograph, Houdini is holding a playing card, but you can't see the card because it's just the back of the card. And I say to them, what do you think Houdini's card is right now? And they say, I don't know, I think it's the three of clubs. And you say, man, that's so weird. Everybody that looks at that photo always goes for that card. Because all you got to do now is if you zoom in on his eyes, you'll see a little surprise that Houdini has doctored into that image. And when they zoom into the eyes, they see that in the highlights of his eyes is the three of clubs. Again, it's a thing where it's a magical performance where you were using the spectator's phone as a way to find a photograph.
And one thing that keeps coming to my head is that the amateur performer, what I mean by that is, the non-professional performer, really benefits from having a tool belt of things that they can use. Whether that means, you've got two gimmicked coins in your wallet, or you've got a pack of cards in your pocket, or, whatever it is, having some things that you have with you on the go, some loops in your wallet or whatever, is a fantastic thing. So you can do magic at any point in time. You can seamlessly get in or get out of doing magic in the real world. And this just seems like one of those total invisible gimmicks that someone can just have on them.
Yeah, exactly. One of the other things that I'm always striving for in whatever I create is speed. The word speed constantly comes up in every product that I've ever made. mainly because I envision not only myself performing the effect, but I envision everybody else in the world that purchases the product performing it. And I want magicians to be able to do this extremely fast. So I'm not interested in long-winded, presentations. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. Obviously, in the proper context, those presentations and performances are amazing. But I know how difficult it is for professional magicians that are, let's say, doing strolling magic to get people's attention and hold their attention for a certain period of time. So, yeah, having this kind of a utility that's ready to go at any time is a key factor of how I make products.
Let's talk a little bit about virtual. A lot of magic has been going virtual recently because of the pandemic and the social isolation. And there are some interesting ways where these apps can translate virtually. And right now, so many magicians are grasping to these different areas of magic that maybe they hadn't considered in the past, that are allowing magic to happen through the screen, in other people's hands, at their homes, different things like that. So talk to us a little bit about how one might use app magic virtually right now.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I'm gonna answer that question by actually doing a performance for you right now. Would you like to see a magic trick?
I would love nothing more than to see a
Let's
magic
do it.
trick
Let's
right
do
now.
it. All right, Jonah, you've got your phone on you right now, right?
I do.
Let's go to the famous Google site that's out there, which is called Google Stats. And so go ahead and launch any browser on your phone. And in the address bar, you're just going to go to Google. It's the word Google, minus sign, like a dash, and then stats.com.
Done.
Okay, perfect. So, Jonah, this is basically the website where Google showcases all the things that are trending, that are really popular in the world right now. But what I want you to do is, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of that first page, okay, you're going to notice that there's an area that's called Recently Trending Topics. I want you to go ahead and select, I think it's the first topic that says cities.
Yep.
Now, Jonah, as you scroll down that page, you're going to see the top 100 trending cities that are in the world. And I want you to quickly scroll down this very, very long list until you get all the way to the bottom of that page.
And I am at the
You're at the
bottom.
bottom. Okay, perfect. Jonah, I believe in your superhuman subconscious memory. I do. In fact, I think that everyone has it. And what I'm about to do right now is to tap into the power of your subconscious memory. So if you were to shut your eyes just for a moment and imagine this list of the top 100 trending cities going by as you were scrolling by. And if I was to name a random city like, I don't know, like New York City, where do you think from 1 to 100 New York is on that list?
Of popular cities, let's say 5.
5. Okay, now remember, you could have
Yeah.
said anything, right? And there's
Yeah.
no way I could have known from 1 to 100 what you were going to say. Now, Jonah, you're going to really, really freak me out if you scroll up to your number and you see New York City.
I'm scrolling as fast as I can. And number 5 is New York City.
Oh my gosh.
New York City is exactly number 5.
Jonah, you're freaking me out, man.
Bing, bang, boom. I love it. That's what an amazing example. You just did that with completely through the computer.
Right. And notice that we're not even video chatting right now. So this can happen just over a phone conversation that you can do this effect. And it's also an effect where you're giving the spectator the power. You're saying to them that you're the one that's magical because you could subconsciously remember every item that's on that list. And so I can now proceed actually with a variety of different effects that we can go on to that just from Google Stats. Since your question was, in an age of performing magic over Zoom or video chat, what do you do? Notice how this effect or the reveal of this effect happened in your hand right now. So right now, as you're on googlestats.com, if you were to refresh that page, you would notice that, still, item number 5 is New York City,
Wow.
Yeah. So, and you're welcome to kind of like just examine what that's all about, and you would see that everything's just normal. It's a typical statistics website. but that's one of many examples of performing both Inject and ReaList, where all of the wonder is happening on their end instead of the magic and the wonder happening on the magician's end. And through video, that magic is kind of like being transmitted to you, which is very similar to what a typical television broadcast of magic would be.
I'm thinking about a spectator thinking of a place and putting it down, and maybe like at the end of a virtual show you can reveal which place they thought of.
Yeah. It's a lot of people have come up with using Realist and Inject in really clever ways in these kinds of remote performance environments. Like basically what happened right now for you is that New York City is the force city. Right. So even though I did a performance where I'm highlighting your superhuman memory, I could have like texted you the reveal and asked you not to look at the text. There's actually a performance that I have which forces Tom Hanks, and before I start, I text the spectator a sentence, and the sentence says, "This old man has a nice knowing smile." And I asked the spectator actually to read that sentence before we proceed with the effect. Then, when they go and they select the number from 1 to 100 and they go to the actors category, and they get to Tom Hanks, I remark, I'm like, well, you see, my prediction was right. Tom Hanks has a nice knowing smile. And people look at you like, I guess, right? Say, no, you know what, man? I know that this didn't really go as well as I planned, but I think I can salvage this because all you got to do is just read the first letter of each word in that sentence. This old man, Tom, has a nice knowing smile. Hanks, Hanks. Right. So it's a good
Wow.
example of an open prediction, where the spectator was looking at the prediction throughout the performance. They just didn't recognize there was a little hidden message that was in it.
Yeah, it's phenomenal some of the stuff that you're able to do. Earlier, you mentioned that you made some of the functionalities of the apps broader so that other people can have creations of their own. Do you have any examples of some things that have come back to you now that it's been out there in the wild? Some effects that have people have brought back.
Yeah. Inject has now several different products that add into it, meaning that there are products literally that are plugins to Inject.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there are quite a bit. My buddy Tom Parkin has a email prediction product that works with Inject, where you're emailing someone the prediction before you start. Ian Pigeon, that's from Australia, he has an add-on that allows Inject to integrate with not premonition, but prevision, which is an incredible app that allows you to make video predictions, on the spectator's phone. So yeah, I mean, it goes hand in hand with what you're saying as far as here's a foundational tool that other developers, used to add functionality to their own products. And oftentimes it becomes the main transmission and reception tool basically for these products.
Let's talk a little bit about fears. I know that many magicians have fears with using technology in their magic, and sometimes it's just things that they're against, but sometimes magicians are afraid or worried or nervous. On the first end, I'd love to know what is it, what can you tell them to allow them to give it a shot and try some things out? And then on the other end, is there any advice or any like let's talk about some of the truths to the challenges of technological magic and how we can do our best to avoid some of the pitfalls.
I was at a convention one time, and Paul Harris actually made that comment to me. Paul Harris said, Greg, aren't you afraid that technology is going to get the credit for this? And what I said to Paul is no. I said, Paul, the reactions that you see my spectators get from me performing for them are real. This isn't fake, man.
Right,
You
right.
know, so my first advice to anyone that is hesitant to perform app magic is you're going to be blown away by how wowed and how entertained your audiences are going to be when you do this. the number one thing that I think converts magicians to becoming fans of doing app magic is once they experience their first performance, if they do it well, they're hooked. They recognize that, wow, this is a real tool. And oftentimes I compare it actually to a thumb tip. you know, the first time,
That's a perfect example.
yeah,
Perfect
yeah,
example.
yeah. It's like, when somebody does a thumb tip trick for you the first time and you don't know it's a thumb tip, you're like blown away. You're like, okay, he had a silk, he put it in his hand, the silk is gone. He doesn't have any sleeves. I have no idea where this silk went. Right?
Mhm.
So you are
Mhm.
completely baffled by a thumb tip. And then, as you're about to purchase this trick that you don't know what the secret of is, the guy gives you a fake plastic thumb. And your first reaction is, are you kidding me? I'm not going to do this. Right? And your first reaction is, well, isn't this just obvious? The sales guy who's demoing the thumb tip to you has to remind you, did you
Yeah.
see it when I was performing for you?
Right.
Right?
I just did this 2 minutes ago and you didn't
You didn't
notice.
notice it, right? And it takes this kind of like a leap of faith that all magicians that have used the thumb tip in their life or even continue to do so, that once they take that leap of faith, they recognize, wow, a thumb tip is amazing if it's used correctly. And it's a similar thing here. This is a tool. It's one of many tools that you have in your toolbox. You use it right, it's awesome. And that's my first bit of advice that I have for people. The second one is, I do agree that there are magic app things that pretty much scream technology, where the method is pretty obvious. I don't want to name any names, but there are people that are familiar with magic apps who will know the good ones and not the not so good ones. So I think that once you weed out the ones that just scream technology, then you'll find that performing app magic on a spectator's phone is as seamless as borrowing any other object from the spectator, dollar bill, a coin, or anything else like that. And it actually carries a similar impact for the spectator because it is a borrowed item. And the last thing that I want to say, regarding hesitation about app magic is sometimes older magicians might find just a typical hesitation to technology. And I hear that all the time about, just about every kind of technology, obviously, not just app magic.
Right now, magicians are not doing virtual shows because of fear of technology, just of using basic online communication softwares. And I feel for them, but it's a problem that's happening.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's, a classic kind of a problem where somebody says, I'm not tech savvy, you know? And yeah, unfortunately, it's something that you have to kind of get over. And it's my job to do everything in my power to make a tool that is going to make it easy for you to get into this. But at the end of the day, there's still one of the problems with creating Swiss Army knives or creating Lego sets is that they are so feature rich that sometimes the fact that it is so feature rich becomes scary for someone that's experiencing it. It becomes daunting and overwhelming for a lot of my customers just because they're like, oh my God, it does so much. I don't know where to start. you know?
For sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest negatives about my products is that oftentimes, especially with Inject, they're just overwhelming. But I think that if you give it like less than 15 minutes and just read through the first page of the manual, you'll recognize, wow, there's just a powerhouse here.
This is phenomenal, and I think this is an exciting opportunity not only to act as maybe a little bit of a wake up call for people who have swept app magic under the rug in general, app magics. I think it's just a brilliant industry. So I'm pumped about that, and I'm also excited about, right now I'm trying my hardest to arm magicians with virtual magic tools, because that is the thing that is going on in the present, and I'm really excited about this as a virtual magic tool, and I think that people can get a lot of headway. And also, what's really exciting is we're seeing now innovation in the worlds of virtual magic. So I'm sure you're going to get even more examples of people using the Swiss Army knife for their own interesting virtual magic
Right,
effects.
right. No, I totally agree. I think that, necessity is the father of invention. And now we're forced to, think along these lines of performing remotely. We have to innovate and come up with clever solutions that are going to amaze our audiences, even though they're someplace else in the world. Yeah, I agree with you.
100%. And with that, we are nearing the end of the episode. And with every episode, there's a few wrap up questions. So the first is the endless chain. In order to keep the podcast going on for eternity, each guest is asked to recommend another guest. Who do you think would be absolutely fantastic to be featured on this podcast to talk magic theory?
I think if Guy Delfrat from Brazil, have you already interviewed Guy?
Nope.
Oh,
Nope.
Guy is awesome. Yeah, I highly recommend. Gui's product is phenomenal. It's called TAP, which is the architect of predictions. So yeah, Gui's take on this is very different from mine. I shouldn't say very different. We both create app magic, but his happens on the magician's phone. But it's a pretty justified way of using the magician's phone. So yeah, as far as the people that
Awesome.
are along the lines of what I do, definitely Gui.
Awesome. Excited to chat with him about that. The next question is about modern magic. So magic and trends happening in magic currently. What do you like about magic right now, and what do you not like about magic right now?
What I love about magic right now is, in general, magic is just an evolving art form that takes existing premises and constantly pushes the boundaries of both presentation and method. And I think that's been going on since the dawn of magic. So, as far as how it's different today, I'm amazed at some of the new methods that people are finding for old plots. And some of that is based on technology, but others is based on just pure brilliance and seeing solutions that no one had ever seen before. That's something that's exciting. Which in the world of computer science, to us, algorithm is king. you know, and an algorithm is nothing more than an idea. And so seeing ideas evolve to the level that they're evolving right now is really cool. As far as things that are negative that are going on in magic, I would say probably the biggest negative is how easy it is for people to get into magic without really appreciating the origins of it or how hard it is for people to work towards it. So I teach my children to appreciate everything and not to take anything for granted. And I think that we live in a generation now where a lot of people take anything that's happened in the past for granted, you know, and they don't recognize how hard it was to get to that level of innovation that now you just simply kind of like swipe away. They go, oh, yeah, so
Yeah,
obvious.
it's it's hard to share that same sort of appreciation and the same sort of, not only do we see it echoed in magic, but I grew up with my parents yelling at me about how lucky I am to have 100 channels, and that they only had four, and whatever other growth that we have that kind of seems unfair to the and tilted incorrectly. The next question is the take home point. So people have been listening to us talk about magic and app magic for a little while now. What is, do you think, the most important thing for people to take home and remember from this episode, from the things we discussed?
The main take home point is if you can find motivation in your repertoire in including something that requires the internet, then app magic is amazing. And it's something that your spectator actually walks away with a souvenir on their own device. And that's, yeah, I'm sorry if I'm having a hard time coming up with a good sentence to finish this off.
No, listen, I like it, and I also think that even outside of app magic, like remembering the importance of motivation is often what separates great magic from crappy magic, and that's when some of those things are transparent. So the idea of remembering the motivation and being focused on the motivation of your actions in all of your magic is a phenomenal thing for people to keep in
Absolutely, yeah.
mind.
No, I think that you said it really eloquently. That motivation is key in every kind of a performance, in every magic performance. As long as you can create magic with anything, in my particular case, is technology magic, where every action is motivated, then you will create wonder.
Finally, let's talk about plugs. Where can people find you, and where can people find Inject 2.0 and ReaList?
Inject is available both on the iOS and the Android App Store. So on the iOS App Store, it is Inject Magic. So if you did a search for that, you'd find it right away. On the Android Play Store, it's simply Inject 2. Same for ReaList. You can find them both on iOS and Android. ReaList is available in the iOS App Store as The ReaList. So if you search for The ReaList, you'll find it. And on Android, it's just ReaList.
Fabulous. And thank you so much, Greg, not only for the information and insight, but also for making quite a serious creation and tool to be used by magicians all around the world. Thank you. And thank you for this episode. Thanks for joining us and sharing and letting us learn a little bit about the world of app magic.
Thank you, Jonah. Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
Thank you. And of course, a big thank you to everybody at home who joined us, learned a little bit, and gave us their ears. Your listenership means the world. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next Thursday. Peace. Well, there you have it. I hope, of course, that you liked the episode and that you learned something. Take a moment right now and go leave an iTunes review. What? Yes, I know, an iTunes review. It really helps. It really means the world, and it helps other people discover this and learn a thing or two about magic. Thanks, as always, for being here. It means the world. I'll see you next Thursday.